Hello, this is Photography Gamer. Welcome back to the channel. In today's episode, I'll be looking at the photo mode in The Last of Us Part 2. I'll break down the photo mode functions. Following that, I will focus on the special topic, using the environment to your advantage, where I'm going to break down how you can use various environmental elements and features to accentuate your virtual photography. Finally, I'll conclude the episode with some questions I've received from the virtual photography community. Okay, The Last of Us Part 2 photo mode. Well, they've made some overhaul changes, Naughty Dog have. Previously in the last game and the Uncharted games, they had a similar system which was quite awkward. It had everything you needed, but it was like filed in the wrong places, so it made actually making a photo a bit of a pain in the backside. But now they've definitely made an improvement. So basic functions, if you want to enter the photo mode, pause the game and scroll down to the photo mode option. The L and R sticks move and rotate the camera around your subject. If you click R3, that will put a grid up. Grids are good if you want to balance the image in terms of positioning. It basically uses a grid of thirds to just balance where you want to place things. L2 and R2 are a zoom function, good for coming in for tight crops or wider angle. If you use the D-pad left and right, that will change the setting on your current tab. Square hides the menu when you're ready to take your photo, triangle resets the tab you're currently using, and circle closes the photo mode. So now we're going to go into the tabs. L1 and R1 switches between them as I said. First one is camera. Camera mode, we have custom and game. Game is obviously what you're looking at. Custom is once you've made alterations. You can roll. Roll is a tilting mechanism, so I use rolling for motion, movement. If you want to create like some sort of surrealistic image, you can tilt the image, roll it one way or the other, that will have an impact. Then you have field of view. This kind of acts as like a zoom function, so that dictates how much is in the actual frame. So I use that once I've framed the image and just use it to go in or out to make some small adjustments to my composition framing. Tab 2 is depth of field. Depth of field, you can turn it on or off. Then you have the distance and the intensity. The distance is like the origin point of the focus, so you want to make the subject the origin point. So choose the distance that fits where your character is. The intensity dictates whether it's going to be blurry or focused. You know, one end will be everything in focus, one end will be a very shallow region, and everything else will have this nice soft blurring. Tab 3 is display. So we've got brightness, sharpness and saturation. Brightness is good for just bumping up the overall lightness in all the areas. Sharpness is a nice way to make things look a little bit more crisp if you may be in the darker areas, because sometimes things get washed out in the shadows. And saturation, obviously you take the saturation out, you can go black and white and then start editing with that, or add a little bit of color here and there. Tab 4 is screen effects. So we've got chromatic aberration. This is like a feature that kind of distorts the image. I guess I'd compare it to like when you look at a 3D image without 3D glasses, it has like a weird distortion to it. Chromatic aberration is good for that. If you want to create something that has a weirdness and a sort of unusual effect like disorientation. Then there's film grain. Film grain's okay. I'm not sure it's the best film grain system, but film grain is something I would recommend using in The Last of Us because it's very gritty as a game. Grain adds some texture to it. It's not a game I would do real super smooth photos. I'd want to put grain in because it gives it character. And then you've got motion blur, which is what it is. If there's motion in the image, you add that, it will kind of add a dynamism to the motion. Tab 5 are filters. So we have type. So there's quite a good range here, and filters are just, you know, we've all used filters on social media. So it's really something that just changes the colors and all sorts of things in the image, but often they're quite intense. So you go to intensity and you can slide that up and down because you might not want it to look that severe. So try different filters on different images, try different intensities, see what you can achieve. You can also hide characters, whether it's the player, allies, enemies, others, or all. So you might just want to do a landscape, you might just want to get rid of an awkward character in the shot because they're getting in the way, that kind of thing. Tab 6 is vignettes. A vignette is a border on the image that's a shadow that progressively gets lighter, with the idea being drawing your eye into the center of the image and drawing your eye away from the border. You can turn it on and off. You can choose the size and the intensity. So you can go for a very delicate, soft intensity or a very harsh one, so it's like almost like a completely black border. Depending on your image, depending on what you want to achieve, play around with that. Tab 7 is a frames tab. So there's border variety. There's no real fun frames in this. So the frames are quite serious. They're just sort of generic widescreen frames or other options. There's nothing kind of colourful and ridiculous. It's all quite muted. You can have black, white or screen colour frames and then alter the intensity as well. So that it's a nice feature, but it would have been nice if there was a little bit more fun in there. Final tab is tab 8, logo. So you've got the logo type, the position and the size. So you just put your logo on, move it where you want to move it and change the sizing. So it's good if you want to post stuff on social media and you want to show what the game is, or you want to make a sort of mock-up of a poster of the game. I don't use them that often, but it's a pretty good feature to have. Okay, so that's the photo mode functions for Last of Us Part 2. Good points, it's got good menus, better menu layout, good vignetting and a nice variety of solid options. Bad, there's no standalone craning option. The collision detection on the zoom function is a little bit weird. It kind of alters the tilt, it alters the angle of your shot sometimes. The grain, it's not the most useful here. It's nice to have it, but it doesn't quite have as much effect as I would have liked. More frames or stances would have been good. And yeah, it's a little bit serious. Maybe a bit more fun would have been nice in the photo mode, but I guess it is a very serious game. So I'd say overall score-wise, I'd give it an 8.5 out of 10 for the photo mode. It's a much bigger improvement by Naughty Dog on their previous photo mode in terms of the layout, but there's still some issues that need to be tweaked, I would say. Okay, now it's time for the episode's special topic, using the environment to your advantage. Okay, so what exactly do I mean by using the environment to your advantage? Well, the one thing that's always going to be different when taking photos is your surroundings, whether it's the location, time of day, weather, or certain things around you. All these factors can be used to shape and add more atmosphere to your images. So to demonstrate this, I'm going to show you a couple of shots of Abby I took where something in the environment helped shape the image. Okay, first example, mirrors. So this location at a glance isn't very interesting. It's a standard interior with very minimal lighting. But the one thing in the environment that caught my eye was the mirror. So I turned the flashlight on to illuminate the dark room a little bit, and I tried to place Abby in front of the mirror. Now reflections, they're always interesting as they add a kind of duality to a portrait. Like, who is this person in the mirror? Is it the same person on the other side? But due to the darkness here, I chose to use a black and white shot as I thought it was better for the contrast to emphasize the face of the subject. Focus wise, I chose to isolate the reflection as opposed to the main character, which again adds something interesting to the composition. Then it was just a case of finding the right position to balance the reflection and the base character in a way that felt natural. So that's one example of how a boring room with a mirror can be used to create an interesting portrait in black and white that shows the duality of a subject. Okay, second example, fires at night. So we're here with Abby again fighting an infected by a burning car. Immediately the car is the standout part of the environment because it adds a warm glow and interesting shadows to the violent scene. So I specifically attacked the infected by the car as I wanted to use the flames as an interesting backdrop. You know, fire, it's synonymous with anger and aggression, and using it in the background frames the image literally, but also in terms of the thematic feeling of the shot. Then it was just a case of finding the correct composition to showcase my subject and the flames with a kind of synergy that worked. That's what I ended up with, which I think is a pretty powerful and dynamic shot that the fire really improves. Okay, third and final example, weather effects. So after taking the shot by the car, I thought, can I recompose the shot without the fire visible, instead using the rain as a feature to add atmosphere and texture to the shot. And it's amazing how different a shot can look with a slight change in composition with an emphasis on a different angle or environmental feature. So I moved the camera to the ground level at the head of the infected figure and used some light camera roll to create a sense of action. Shooting from the low angle makes everything seem larger or more epic, and this way you also get the real impact of Abby's facial expression, which is ferocious. The rain adds something to the sense of motion as well, as if we're lost in a storm, in a moment of aggression and destruction, with the angle, facial expression and the environmental element conveying various aspects of that feeling. So basically, you can use anything to help shape your shot. Each thing will have a slightly different impact, so experiment and see what results you can come up with. Don't look at the environment and immediately dismiss it. You can always use it to your advantage in creative ways to add something to the shot that you might not have thought of initially. Okay, so there you go, we're nearly done. Just a few questions from the community before we wrap up. question 1, I want to capture a silhouette during daytime, but I'm finding it difficult. Can you help? Well, one tip is look for the sun. Stand your character in front of the sun, like on the side, maybe side profile. Put your camera one side and the sun is the other, and then just lower the exposure, lower the brightness, increase the contrast, put a vignette on. Your character will soon become silhouetted because you've got the bright source in front of you, character, shadows this side than where you are. So that's a quick way of making a silhouette. What's the best way to make a daytime shot look like nighttime? Well, again, exposure and brightness, probably vignetting, probably muting the colors, maybe adding a blue tint, a green tint, some film grain, anything that's going to add kind of texture and depth, because at night time you've not got super smooth visuals. It's all kind of, it's like when you walk around at night in your house, you don't see things in a smooth way. It's like there's a graininess to it, you know what I mean? So you've got to think about that, lower the brightness, lower the exposure, all those kind of things. I'm never sure when to alter the temperature of my shots. When should I use cold or warm? What would you recommend? Well, warm and cold, like traditionally people use blue at night and warm during the daytime in like deserts and warm looking places, but you can go too far with it. There's no right or wrong way, it just depends. Like blue has a sadness attached to it as a kind of color. When you put it on an image, it creates something emotive that makes you feel like a sadness to it and a dark nighttime feel. Whereas warm colors are more associated with the sun, happy times, warmth, colors, vibrancy. So it's kind of almost like it's a color slider, but it's also an emotion slider in some regard. Not always, but you can definitely use it in both those ways. So there's no right or wrong. You can also use greens at night, greens and blues, but there's no definitive answer. It's just, what does it do to the image? When it goes warm, does it look better? Does it look worse? You have to kind of make a judgment call on your own work in that instance. Okay, we are done. Thank you for watching. I hope that's been a useful episode. I hope I've broken the functions down. I've given you some special topics about the environment, a few questions. Again, I do these videos because I want to help people take pictures. Like, I'm not telling you how to take pictures. I'm telling you what things do, what you can use and how you can use them. What you take from these videos is completely up to you. You can pick and choose what you want, add them to the mix of what you do. Anything that I do that's going to help you or make your job doing virtual photography easier and like less kind of complex, I'm delighted with. So if you've got any questions, put them in the comments. Let me know what you thought of the episode. But for now, that's another one in the can. Thanks for watching. I appreciate all the support. This is Photography Gamer signing off. Thank you.